See yourself living in abundance and you will attract it. It always works, it works every time, with every person. Bob Proctor, you were born rich. You are not what the world told you to be. You are what you see when you close your eyes. Because everything begins first as a picture in the mind. A quiet, flickering image painted not with brushes, but with belief. The life you live right now, whether abundant or scarce, powerful or powerless, is not an accident. It is the manifestation of the images you have held in your mind, consciously or unconsciously, for years. What you repeatedly imagine becomes what you eventually experience. You see, most people don't realize that they're living inside a mental movie, one they've written, directed, and starred in without even knowing it. And the tragedy is not that their movie is filled with struggle or limitation. The real tragedy is that they believe it's the only script they've got. That they have no power to rewrite it. That the film reel is fixed. But it isn't. That movie is not set in stone, it's made of thought, and thought is fluid. It can change. It can evolve. And more importantly, it can be consciously reimagined. The great truth that most will never grasp is this: your mind is the projector, your beliefs are the film, and your life is the screen. So the question isn't, how do I change my life? The question is, what have I been imagining so vividly, so often, that it has no choice but to appear in the world around me? Because if you've been picturing failure, disappointment, lack, and pain, then the life you're living will reflect those pictures back to you, like a mirror. Not because the world is cruel, but because it's obedient. It listens to your dominant vision. It answers to the images you feed it. That's why nothing changes on the outside until something changes on the inside. You will never escape a life you resent by focusing on the life you resent. You rise by seeing the version of yourself that already lives in freedom, wealth, love, health, power, and holding that image so steadily, so faithfully, that your present world begins to shape itself around it. You create your reality through the images in your mind. This isn't fantasy, this is law. Universal law. Just like gravity, it does not care whether you understand it. It simply is. The mind operates in pictures. Not in words. Not in logic. In vision. And what you emotionalize, you magnetize. What you dwell upon internally becomes a command to the infinite intelligence that governs all form. Every time you rehearse a mental scene, a future, a possibility, a version of yourself you desire, you're sending a blueprint to the architect of reality. But here's the problem: most people spend more time imagining what they fear than what they want. They visualize being rejected. They see themselves broke. They picture the worst-case scenario, rehearse it again and again until it becomes so familiar that the body and the nervous system accept it as truth. And then they're surprised when it happens. But you can choose a different image. You can choose to hold, with relentless clarity, a vision of yourself that is whole, wealthy, wise, joyful, free. And if you do it long enough, and deeply enough, the world around you must begin to realign. Not because of magic, but because energy follows intention. Let me say that again: energy follows intention. The image in your mind sets the coordinates for your future. And if you have the courage to upgrade that image, to reimagine yourself not as a victim of life, but as the author of it, then you begin to walk through life with power. Real power. Not power over people, not ego-driven ambition. But power over the one thing that truly matters: your perception. And that's where mindset begins. You don't need to chase success. You need to align with it. You don't need to hustle for self-worth. You need to see yourself as already worthy. Mindset is not about positive thinking for the sake of good vibes. It's about the mental framework through which you interpret reality, and more importantly, the mental blueprint through which you create it. Because when you see yourself as a person of value, of discipline, of divine creative power, then you start to act like that person. And those actions, over time, change your environment. They shift your results. They change your reality. And where did it all begin? Not with action, but with image. A picture in the mind. An idea held with emotional intensity, repeated with unwavering faith. And that's where belief enters. Because you can't consistently hold an image that you don't believe is possible. That's why the majority never even try to change their vision, they don't believe it could ever happen. They've been trained to distrust their own imagination. Conditioned to think realistic means settling for the life that everyone else is living. But let me ask you something, since when did the majority become the standard for possibility? Most people are not free. Most people are not joyful. Most people are not creating from vision. They're reacting from memory. And belief is the bridge between your image and your results. You must believe that the image you see can become the life you live. Not because someone else told you, but because you have decided it. You must look at the current conditions of your life, the debt, the doubt, the heartbreak, the fear, and say boldly, this is not the final picture. This is not the highest version of me. This is temporary. And then, from a place of radical inner authority, you must see something better. You must paint it in your mind's eye in vivid color. Not once. Every day. Every hour, if needed. Because repetition creates belief. And belief unlocks the door. Your image must be nourished. It must be cherished. It must be protected from the noise of a world that wants to pull you back into doubt. Guard your mind like a gate. Because every time you entertain an image of limitation, you're watering weeds. And weeds grow fast. But you're planting trees. And trees don't appear overnight. But their roots go deep. Their presence is permanent. Their fruit is inevitable. So keep watering the image. Keep believing in it. Keep acting from it even when you don't see the evidence yet. Because faith doesn't need proof to begin. Faith creates the proof. Your job is not to figure out how it will happen. Your job is to see it until you believe it, and believe it until you become it. You create reality through the images in your mind. And that truth, that sacred truth, holds more power than any condition you've ever faced. Because the world outside you was never the authority. You were. And still are. But what happens when the image you hold in your mind collides with the circumstances you face? What happens when the vision says wealth, but the bank account says overdraft? When the dream speaks freedom, but your day-to-day feels like a prison? This is the moment most people shrink back. This is where they let go of the image, because it doesn't match what their eyes can see. And so they start to doubt. They look outward for validation instead of inward for truth. But here's what you must understand, the image always comes before the evidence. That's the test. The universe is not asking if you want change. Everyone wants it. The real question is, can you hold the image before it makes sense? Can you see abundance while living in lack? Can you walk like you're free while the chains are still around your ankles? Because the only way those chains will break is if you stop identifying with them. The mind doesn't respond to facts, it responds to focus. And whatever you focus on, you feed. Whatever you feed, grows. You cannot create a new reality by obsessing over the old one. That's like trying to clean a window by staring at the dirt. You've got to shift your attention, not out of denial, but out of creation. You're not pretending the problem doesn't exist. You're simply choosing not to energize it with your mental image. You are the painter. The canvas is your life. And you can either keep repainting the same scenery, or you can create something radically different. But to do that, you must learn to see with vision, not with sight. This is where insight begins. Insight is not just about knowledge, it's about spiritual perception. It's the ability to know something is true, even when there's no proof yet. It's when you stop asking, what can I get, and start asking, who can I become? Because the person you must become to live the life you envision, that person already exists. They're not far from you. They're not waiting to be invented. They're waiting to be discovered. Inside you. That's what insight gives you. The ability to see the person you're becoming, and begin to live from that place now. You begin to walk like that person would walk. Speak like that person would speak. Think like that person would think. And most importantly, feel like that person would feel. Because when your inner world becomes a match for the vision, your outer world must comply. That's not philosophy. That's law. And this vision, this inner image, it isn't just some daydream. It's your soul speaking. It's the divine intelligence within you trying to remind you of who you truly are. You were never meant to struggle just to survive. You were meant to create, to expand, to give, to lead, to love. That vision, it's not ego. It's not fantasy. It's purpose. And purpose is the ignition key to power. The people who change the world are not the ones who have all the answers, they're the ones who have a reason. A reason to rise. A reason to persist. A reason to endure when nothing around them makes sense. Purpose is not found. It's chosen. And it begins by asking yourself the most dangerous, most sacred question you'll ever ask: what was I made for? Because the moment you stop living life by default and begin to live it by design, everything changes. Purpose doesn't come from the outside. It's not given by a job title or a diploma. It comes from the inside. From image. From alignment. When your inner picture is in harmony with your highest potential, you don't need motivation. You move. You act. You get up earlier, stay up later. Not because you have to, but because you can't not. Purpose wakes you up. It gives your image heat. Fire. Energy. It makes your vision unshakable. And when you combine vision with purpose, you stop living from circumstances and start living from conviction. But here's the hard truth: vision and purpose without discipline are just noise. And this is where most people fall. They dream big, they set intentions, they write affirmations, but when it's time to move, they hesitate. They wait to feel ready. They wait for motivation. They wait for the world to give them permission. But discipline doesn't wait. Discipline acts. It shows up regardless of how you feel. Because feelings follow commitment, not the other way around. If you want to bring your image into form, you have to become the kind of person who follows through. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. You have to train your nervous system to obey your vision, not your emotions. Because if your emotions are in control, you'll never make it out of the maze of mediocrity. The moment it gets uncomfortable, you'll retreat. You'll make excuses. You'll tell yourself stories to justify staying small. But when discipline leads, the image gets sharper. It becomes clearer. It starts to move from imagination into incarnation. Your results catch up to your rituals. That's the secret. The world doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you repeat. And repetition is the language of the subconscious. Every time you wake up early, visualize your future, take aligned action, push past the fear, you're building a new identity. You're showing your subconscious who's in charge. You're rewiring your life at the source. And that's the difference between wishing for change and commanding it. Discipline is love in action. It's you saying, I love my future enough to sacrifice for it. I love my vision enough to work for it. I love my destiny enough to endure the temporary pain of growth. Because nothing great is created in comfort. And nothing lasting is built without consistency. You don't get to visit your vision, you must live in it. Breathe it. Build routines around it. Let it become your standard. And then, as you continue to act from that place, something begins to shift. Slowly at first, then all at once. Doors open. Opportunities arrive. The world starts to mirror the image you've carried inside you all along. Not because it was easy, but because you were unshakable. You kept going. You held the image. You kept the faith. You moved with purpose, acted with discipline, and refused to let circumstances define your identity. And in doing so, you stepped into the reality you were always meant to create. Not by accident. Not by luck. But by design. By image. By inner authority. You create reality through the images in your mind, and now you know how. And once you begin creating your reality through conscious image, discipline, and purpose, something miraculous happens. You stop needing to control every outcome. Because you start to trust. You trust the image. You trust the process. You trust the divine intelligence that responds to your thoughts with precision and love. This is the sacred space of gratitude. Gratitude is not a cliché. It's not just something you do in the morning to feel good. Gratitude is a magnetic force, it draws more of what you focus on into your life. When you give thanks for what is, and even for what is becoming, you activate the power of alignment. You say to the universe, I already have it. I already am it. I already see it. And the universe says back, as you believe, so it is done unto you. Gratitude is faith in action. It's looking at an invisible future and saying, thank you, not because it's here, but because it's mine. You give thanks for the vision. You give thanks for the image. You give thanks for the obstacles, because you know they're shaping you. You give thanks for the pain, because it pushed you to seek more. You give thanks for the delay, because it refined your spirit. You give thanks for every single thing, because you understand now. Nothing is happening to you. Everything is happening for your evolution. That kind of gratitude is dangerous. It disrupts fear. It confuses doubt. It demolishes victimhood. And it prepares the soil for miracles. Because gratitude and vision go hand in hand. The more grateful you are, the more clearly you see. And the clearer you see, the more your actions align. This is not random. It's divine design. But even with clarity, even with gratitude, even with vision, life will test you. Not to punish you. To prepare you. There will be moments when everything feels like it's falling apart. When your image doesn't just feel far, it feels impossible. You'll wonder if you've been deluding yourself. If the whole thing was a dream. This is where the world separates those who wish from those who know. Because those who know never stop. They bend, but they do not break. They fall, but they rise faster. They lose, but they never identify with the loss. This is the power of resilience. Resilience is the muscle of creation. It's what allows your image to survive the storm. It's the voice inside that whispers, keep going, when the world shouts, give up. And resilience isn't just toughness, it's trust. It's knowing that the setback is not the end, it's the setup. It's the realignment. It's the strengthening of your spine and the stretching of your faith. Because every great builder faces resistance. Every great artist battles darkness. Every great visionary walks through a season of silence where the world hasn't caught up to what they already know to be true inside. But they hold the image anyway. They hold it through tears, through exhaustion, through loneliness. They hold it when no one else believes. Because it was never about them. It was about you. It was about your calling. Your divine assignment. Your God-given blueprint. Your infinite potential made manifest through faith, discipline, and unshakable vision. And resilience sharpens that potential. Because it reveals who you really are not when things go well, but when everything is on the line. And here's the secret most people miss. The vision doesn't just change your results. It changes you. You grow into it. You shed the layers of doubt, of fear, of past conditioning. You become lighter. Stronger. Clearer. You stop chasing life and start commanding it, not from ego, but from authority. From alignment. From truth. And in that space, you become a living expression of the image you've been holding all along. That's why you must never stop learning. Never stop growing. Never stop studying yourself, your mind, your soul. Learning isn't about collecting information, it's about transformation. The more you understand yourself, your thoughts, your habits, your triggers, your power, the more you realize you've had the keys the whole time. You don't need to be fixed. You don't need permission. You need awareness. Because awareness is power. Once you become aware of the belief systems that shaped your current life, you can replace them. You can rewrite them. You can re-image your future. That's what learning is, an uncovering. A remembering. You're not becoming something new. You're returning to what you've always been, underneath the noise. And once you remember who you are, an infinite, creative being, everything changes. You walk differently. You speak with weight. You dream in detail. You stop playing small. Because you realize, there's no virtue in shrinking. There's no holiness in hiding your light. You were meant to shine. You were meant to radiate. You were meant to take up space. Not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. Because the greatest gift you can give the world is the fullest expression of the image inside you. When you rise, others rise. When you live your vision, others are inspired to discover theirs. This is the ripple effect of conscious creation. It doesn't just change your life. It changes your lineage. Your family. Your community. Your world. Because light spreads. And now, you know how to activate it. With image. With intention. With faith that doesn't flinch. With discipline that moves mountains. With gratitude that softens the heart. With resilience that stands through the storm. And with a deep, unshakable knowing that you were always the architect. You were always the source. Not separate from God, but of God, an extension of divine mind, endowed with the power to imagine and create worlds. And the world you create starts now. In this moment. With the image you choose to hold. Not tomorrow. Not later. Not someday. Now. Because now is the only time reality can be shaped. Now is the only moment you own. Now is the doorway. And the image is the key. So now, I ask you, what image will you choose? Will you choose the image of limitation, fear, and inherited doubt? Or will you choose the image of power, vision, and divine authority? This is not a question for later. This is the question of your life. Because whatever image you accept, you become. That's the miracle and the responsibility. You are not just a person living inside a world. You are a world creating itself through a person. Every thought. Every emotion. Every belief. Every decision. It all flows from the image you permit to live inside your mind. You are the gatekeeper. And now that you know, you can no longer pretend to be a victim of circumstances. You can no longer sit in silence while life happens around you. You are not powerless. You are not waiting to be chosen. You have already been chosen by life itself to carry out something extraordinary. The image you carry is not just about money or success or status. It's about your soul waking up. It's about becoming the version of you that God already sees. That version is not in the future, it's in you right now. Tapping. Knocking. Calling. Whispering, it's time. Time to see differently. To think differently. To walk differently. To speak differently. To expect differently. You have lived too long in images that were never yours to begin with, hand-me-down beliefs, generational fears, societal programming. But now you break the cycle. Now you rise. Because now, you remember. You remember that wealth is not outside of you, it flows through you. You remember that love is not something to earn, it's something to embody. You remember that purpose is not hidden, it's activated by vision and service. You remember that faith is not weak, it is the boldest power on this earth. And with this remembering comes fire. Not just inspiration, but ignition. You begin to live like it's already done. You walk like you know the outcome is secure. You show up like heaven is backing every move. You stop needing validation because your image is your compass. You stop waiting for the right time because you are the right time. You stop shrinking to fit because you were never meant to fit. You were meant to lead. Not through dominance, but through alignment. Through love. Through conviction. Through clarity. through a quiet, unstoppable force that says, I know who I am. I know what I carry. I know what I came here to build. And if the world says no, you still go. If the door doesn't open, you build your own. If the money isn't there, you act as if it already is. Because that's the power of image. It doesn't wait to be confirmed, it creates confirmation. And soon, the world begins to respond. Not because you're lucky. Not because you're special in ways others are not. But because you did the one thing most people never do. You held the image. You believed when it made no sense. You moved when it was uncomfortable. You spoke life when everyone else was speaking fear. You trained your mind to obey your vision, not your environment. And that changes everything. So hold it. Hold the image of who you were always meant to be. Hold it when it hurts. Hold it when it's quiet. Hold it when your past tries to drag you back. Hold it when your present looks nothing like your vision. Hold it when no one claps, no one sees, no one understands. Hold it because that image is you. And every second you hold it, it grows stronger. It gains detail. It sharpens. It begins to call forth the people, the resources, the breakthroughs, not because you chased them, but because you became the version of you that attracts them. This is the divine law. This is the truth you were never taught. This is what Bob Proctor knew, and what you now know. You don't get what you want. You get what you are. And what you are flows from the image in your mind. So go now. Not to search, but to create. Close your eyes. See it. Feel it. Believe it. Walk in it. Speak from it. Live as if it were already yours, because it is. The real shift doesn't happen when the world changes, it happens when your image changes. Because once that happens, everything else must follow. You create reality through the images in your mind. And now, with that image burning bright inside you, you rise. Not someday. Not later. Now.